Hello everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into a crucial aspect of Buddhist teachings, understanding negative emotions and how we can use these insights to control our feelings and maintain calm. In a world that is constantly in motion, emotions can sometimes feel like they're in control of us. Whether it's anger, fear, jealousy, or sadness, these feelings can overtake us, clouding our judgment and disrupting our peace of mind. But what if I told you that these emotions are not inherently a part of who we are? According to Buddhism, they are simply temporary states that arise due to attachments and desires. Let's break this down. In Buddhism, negative emotions are seen as reactions to the attachments we have to things, ideas, people, and even ourselves. We cling to the belief that these external factors hold the key to our happiness. And when those attachments are threatened or unfulfilled, we feel negative emotions. When we look at things from this perspective, we start to realize that these emotions are not natural parts of our essence, but rather, they are the product of ignorance. Ignorance, in this case, means our misunderstanding of the true nature of reality. We fail to see that everything in life is impermanent and ever-changing, and this leads to our emotional turmoil. Now, the key to breaking free from these emotions lies in understanding their root causes. Through mindfulness and self-awareness, we can start to see the patterns of attachment that fuel these emotions. Mindfulness, in Buddhism, refers to the practice of paying attention to the present moment, with full awareness and without judgment. It's about observing our thoughts and feelings as they arise, without immediately reacting to them. When we cultivate mindfulness, we can start to recognize when negative emotions begin to take hold. Instead of allowing them to control us, we can acknowledge them and let them pass. This is where the true power of emotional regulation lies. But how do we achieve this emotional freedom? First, we need to embrace the concept of non-attachment. Buddhist teachings encourage us to detach ourselves from the things that cause us suffering. It's not about rejecting the things we love or the people who are important to us. Instead, it's about understanding that attachment to these things creates expectations and dependency. When our expectations aren't met, we feel disappointment, frustration, and anger. When we let go of these attachments, we free ourselves from the cycles of suffering that come with them. At the core of Buddhist wisdom is the idea that we can transform our relationship with our emotions. We don't have to suppress or ignore our feelings. Instead, we learn to observe them with compassion and understanding. This doesn't mean that negative emotions will never arise. They will. But by practicing mindfulness, we develop the skill to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Over time, this practice can lead to greater emotional control, allowing us to stay calm and centered even in the face of difficult situations. This journey towards emotional freedom is not an overnight process. It requires patience, dedication, and practice. But the rewards are profound. Imagine a life where you are no longer swept away by every emotional storm, where you can face challenges with a sense of calm and clarity. Imagine being able to maintain your peace, no matter the circumstances around you. This is the power that Buddhist teachings offer us. By understanding the root causes of our negative emotions and practicing mindfulness, we can begin to break free from the cycle of suffering and find true emotional freedom. So, as we embark on this journey together, I invite you to reflect on your own emotions. Notice the moments when anger, fear, or sadness arise. Instead of reacting automatically, pause and take a moment to breathe. Ask yourself, what am I attached to in this moment? What is the root of this feeling? By asking these questions, we begin to unravel the layers of attachment that bind us. Through this process, we start to cultivate the emotional control and calm that Buddhist teachings promise us. In the end, emotional freedom isn't about eliminating negative emotions altogether. It's about understanding them, learning from them, and not allowing them to define us. It's about creating space between stimulus and response, so that we can choose how we want to engage with our emotions, rather than being controlled by them. This is the path that leads to true peace and tranquility. As we continue this journey together, remember that emotional freedom is not a destination, but a process. It's a continuous practice that requires mindfulness, awareness, and the willingness to look within. The more we understand our emotions through the lens of Buddhism, the more we can transform our lives from the inside out. Let's take this first step toward emotional freedom, together. Welcome back, everyone. In this segment, we'll be diving deeper into one of the most transformative concepts in Buddhism: mindfulness. If there's one practice at the heart of Buddhist teachings that holds the key to mastering our emotions, it's mindfulness. This practice isn't just about being aware of the present moment. It's about cultivating a deep, non-judgmental awareness of our thoughts, feelings, and experiences. And in doing so, we unlock the ability to control our emotional responses, rather than being controlled by them. So what exactly is mindfulness? Simply put, mindfulness is the practice of observing our thoughts and emotions as they arise, without immediately reacting to them or becoming overwhelmed by them. It's about creating space between our experiences and our emotional responses. By doing this, we can see our emotions for what they truly are: temporary, impermanent states that come and go like waves in the ocean. The Buddha often compared our emotions to waves rising and falling, gaining strength and then dissipating. If we can learn to simply observe these waves, without getting caught up in them, we can maintain a sense of calm and detachment. Now, I know what you might be thinking. But how do I stay calm when anger, fear, or anxiety arise? It's not easy, I'll admit. But this is where mindfulness comes in. Instead of reacting impulsively or suppressing your emotions, mindfulness encourages you to step back and observe them. It's about acknowledging the emotion without letting it define you or dictate your actions. For instance, when you feel anger bubbling up inside you, instead of acting on it immediately, take a moment to pause. Notice the physical sensations in your body: your heart rate, the tension in your muscles, the heat in your chest. These are clues that help you understand your emotions without being swept away by them. Through mindfulness, we begin to understand that emotions are not permanent. They don't last forever. In fact, they're constantly changing and evolving, just like the weather. One moment you may feel overwhelmed by sadness, and the next, it may fade away. This realization that emotions are fleeting gives us the power to prevent them from taking control of our lives. When we can step back and observe our emotions from a place of awareness, we stop identifying with them. We realize that we are not our emotions. We are the observer of those emotions. And when we approach our feelings with this kind of awareness, we don't let them dictate our behavior. Mindfulness also teaches us that emotions, even negative ones, are a natural part of being human. It's not about suppressing these emotions or pretending they don't exist. In fact, trying to push emotions away can often make them stronger. Instead, mindfulness teaches us to accept them as they are, without judgment. When we acknowledge our feelings without criticism, we can begin to understand their root causes. For example, when you feel anxious, rather than immediately judging yourself for being weak or irrational, mindfulness invites you to simply notice the anxiety. Where is it coming from? What is it trying to tell you? By being curious and compassionate with ourselves, we can uncover the underlying fears or desires that fuel our emotions. One of the greatest gifts of mindfulness is that it allows us to break free from the cycle of emotional reactivity. When we react to our emotions impulsively, whether by lashing out in anger or shutting down in fear, we only create more suffering for ourselves and those around us. But with mindfulness, we create a pause between stimulus and response. This pause gives us the space to choose how we want to react. It allows us to respond with clarity and intention, rather than out of habit or impulse. And as we practice mindfulness, this pause becomes longer and more natural, helping us to stay grounded in even the most challenging situations. So, how do we incorporate mindfulness into our daily lives? It starts with simple awareness. Whenever you find yourself feeling overwhelmed by an emotion, stop for a moment and take a few deep breaths. Notice the sensation of the breath moving in and out of your body. This simple act of focusing on the breath helps bring your attention back to the present moment, away from the swirl of thoughts and feelings that may be consuming you. As you breathe, ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What thoughts are accompanying this emotion? By becoming aware of your emotional state, you can begin to unravel the layers of thought and desire that are contributing to it. But mindfulness isn't just about addressing negative emotions. It's also about cultivating a deep sense of gratitude and appreciation for the positive moments in life. By practicing mindfulness regularly, we train our minds to be more present and attuned to the beauty of the world around us. This helps us develop a more balanced emotional state, one where we are less affected by the highs and lows of life and more grounded in the steady rhythm of the present moment. Through consistent mindfulness practice, we can transform our relationship with our emotions. Rather than seeing them as obstacles or burdens, we begin to see them as opportunities for growth and self-discovery. We learn that emotions are not something to be feared or avoided, but something to be understood and embraced. This shift in perspective allows us to break free from the patterns of emotional reactivity that often cause us suffering. In the end, mindfulness is about developing a greater awareness of ourselves and our emotional landscape. It's about creating a space where we can respond thoughtfully and deliberately, rather than being swept away by the tide of our feelings. Through mindfulness, we gain the freedom to choose how we engage with our emotions, rather than being controlled by them. And this is where true emotional mastery lies. So, I invite you to begin your mindfulness practice today. The next time you feel an emotion rising within you, take a moment to stop, breathe, and observe. Notice the feelings, the thoughts, and the sensations in your body. Allow them to come and go without judgment or attachment. And as you continue to practice mindfulness, you'll find that your ability to control your emotions and maintain calm will grow stronger, leading to a deeper sense of peace and emotional freedom. In the journey of emotional control and inner peace, one of the most transformative practices in Buddhism is cultivating compassion, not just for others, but for ourselves as well. It may sound counterintuitive, but the key to mastering our emotions, particularly the negative ones, starts with extending kindness and understanding to ourselves. In moments when anger rises or frustration takes hold, we have a choice. We can either react impulsively, letting these emotions guide our actions, or we can respond with compassion, creating a space for emotional healing. The Buddha's teachings remind us that compassion is not just a practice aimed at others, it's a powerful tool to heal our own inner turmoil. The practice of loving kindness, or metta, begins with ourselves. When we cultivate compassion for our own struggles and hardships, we begin to create an inner calm that allows us to respond with wisdom and patience. By acknowledging the pain behind our emotions, we begin to shift the energy from negativity to positivity, breaking the cycle of emotional reactivity. Think of a time when you felt overwhelmed by anger, sadness, or frustration. Perhaps the situation triggered a strong emotional response, and you found yourself reacting in a way that didn't serve you or others. In that moment, what if you paused for a moment and recognized the underlying suffering? What if, instead of letting the anger consume you, you offered yourself compassion in the form of understanding? When you allow yourself to feel the emotion fully but choose to act with kindness towards yourself, you create a powerful shift. Compassion opens up a space to heal, to release the grip of negative emotions, and to transform that energy into something more constructive. This process doesn't mean suppressing or ignoring our emotions. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Cultivating compassion means that we acknowledge and embrace our emotions without judgment. We allow ourselves to feel without labeling or criticizing ourselves for feeling angry, anxious, or upset. Compassion is not about perfection, it's about recognizing that we are all human, and we all experience moments of suffering. By showing ourselves the same kindness we would show a friend, we start to heal from within. This practice also extends to how we interact with others. When we learn to practice compassion for ourselves, we find it easier to extend that same kindness to others. In the heat of an argument or misunderstanding, we might be tempted to react in frustration or anger. But when we take a step back and reflect on the suffering behind the other person's actions, we begin to see them with compassion instead of judgment. It's in these moments that our emotional control is tested, and cultivating compassion becomes our greatest tool. Imagine a world where everyone practiced compassion not just for others, but for themselves too. A world where we understood that behind every negative emotion lies the potential for healing, growth, and transformation. This is the essence of Buddhist practice, and it's a practice that leads to emotional freedom. Compassion allows us to see beyond the surface of our emotions and to recognize the deeper causes of suffering. It's through this understanding that we can begin to transform our negativity into positivity, our anger into peace, and our frustration into calm. When we embrace compassion as a daily practice, we change the way we respond to the world around us. We stop reacting out of fear, anger, or insecurity, and instead, we act from a place of deep understanding and inner peace. This is not just about feeling good in the moment, it's about creating lasting change in how we relate to ourselves, to others, and to the world. By developing compassion for ourselves, we open up the possibility for profound emotional healing and growth. It's a practice that, over time, transforms us from the inside out, enabling us to maintain calm and emotional balance, no matter what challenges arise. In essence, cultivating compassion is not just a Buddhist practice, it's a universal truth that can help us all navigate the complexities of human emotion. It teaches us that our emotions don't have to control us, and that by embracing them with love and understanding, we can achieve a sense of peace and emotional stability that transcends the chaos of the world around us. One of the most profound teachings in Buddhism is the power of letting go. It's something we often hear about but don't always fully understand, this idea of releasing our attachments and desires. It sounds simple, but in reality, it's a deep and transformative practice that can bring lasting peace. Letting go is not about denying our emotions or pushing them away. Rather, it's about recognizing when these emotions have a hold on us and choosing to stop identifying with them. Think about the times in your life when you've been overwhelmed by an emotion, whether it's anger, sadness, anxiety, or frustration. In those moments, it can feel like those emotions define who you are. We may even think, I am angry, or I am upset, and allow those feelings to guide our behavior and shape our perception of ourselves. But the Buddha teaches us that emotions are not our identity. They are temporary, fleeting states, and we don't have to let them control us. Letting go is about understanding that we don't need to hold on to these emotions. We don't need to cling to them as if they are part of who we are. Now, letting go is not an instant fix. It's a practice. It takes time, patience, and self-awareness. At first, it may feel difficult to release our grip on the things, outcomes, or even people we've become attached to. But the more we practice, the more we begin to understand that our attachments are often the source of our suffering. The more tightly we cling, the more we suffer. When we stop clinging to the things we cannot control, we begin to make room for something much greater, inner peace. In Buddhism, we believe that true freedom comes from within. It's not about the world around us changing, but about our ability to change how we relate to it. When we release our attachment to negative emotions, to outcomes that we cannot control, or to situations that cause us stress, we create the space for mindfulness and compassion to flourish. This is when we truly begin to experience peace. Imagine how different your life could be if you stopped clinging to the emotions that bring you pain. What if you allowed yourself to feel anger, sadness, or frustration, but without letting those feelings take over? What if, instead of identifying with your emotions, you recognized them for what they are, just temporary states that will pass? By practicing letting go, you create the space to respond with wisdom, patience, and clarity. You no longer let your emotions dictate your reactions, and in doing so, you gain the power to choose peace over turmoil. Letting go also applies to our attachments to people, outcomes, and material possessions. Often, we find ourselves attached to certain people, thinking that our happiness depends on them or their approval. But this creates a dependency that can lead to suffering. In the same way, we might become attached to outcomes thinking that we can only be happy if things go a certain way. But life is unpredictable, and when we hold tightly to our expectations, we set ourselves up for disappointment and frustration. The Buddha teaches us that true peace comes when we let go of these attachments and accept things as they are. The process of letting go also involves being mindful of the present moment. Instead of worrying about the future or ruminating on the past, we learn to embrace what is happening right now. When we stop clinging to our desires for the future or our regrets about the past, we can fully experience the peace of the present moment. This is where true freedom lies, right here, right now, in the acceptance of what is. But how do we start this process of letting go? It begins with self-awareness. We need to become aware of our attachments, of the ways in which we cling to emotions, people, and outcomes. Once we identify these attachments, we can begin to practice releasing them. This can be done through meditation, mindfulness, or simply by taking a step back and observing our emotions without judgment. Instead of reacting to our emotions, we learn to observe them with compassion, allowing them to come and go without being attached to them. As we continue to practice letting go, we begin to notice a shift in our lives. We become less reactive, more peaceful, and more centered. The things that used to upset us no longer have the same power over us. We become less attached to the things that once caused us stress and more open to the flow of life as it is. We begin to experience a sense of freedom that comes from releasing the grip of attachments and embracing the peace that comes from within. Letting go is not about abandoning our emotions or becoming indifferent. It's about understanding that we don't need to hold on to them in order to feel whole. It's about accepting that life is constantly changing and that we can find peace, not by controlling everything, but by learning to release our attachment to it. Through this practice, we cultivate a deep inner peace that is unshakable, no matter what challenges we may face. In the end, the Buddha's teachings on letting go are a reminder that we have the power to free ourselves from the chains of attachment. When we stop clinging, we open ourselves to the infinite peace and wisdom that lies within us. This is the path to true emotional control, to maintaining calm in the face of adversity, and to living a life that is free from the suffering that attachment brings. It's a journey that requires patience and practice, but the rewards are well worth it: inner peace, emotional freedom, and a deep sense of joy.